Yep. Only two buttons. I press the wrong button. Okay. Oh, it's the other room. So, move some very quick light meetings and then hand it off to Todd. So you had the Go user group meetup. If you don't know where you are, that's where you're at. If you want to join us, I kind of changed our slides. So, oh my gosh, that's really annoying, isn't it?
Changed them so much, I don't even feel anymore.
Right. I don't know what happened there. Here, thanks. Do it live. So, ForgeTalk.tech, that's the site where you can find kind of all the links to our Slack and everything else. That's the one-stop shop. I will do a quick warning that these little boxes here at the top are the microphones, and so be careful what you say because they will find you even if you whisper. They're very good at that. You can speak here by going to papercall.io /talkgo link and submitting a talk there. I always plug, especially right now, and this is kind of super appropriate given the content of the talk, our jobs and hiring channels on Slack. There is also Go West, which I think is still planning on being held here. Ryan's not here to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be here. It's not executed by Weave, it's an independent project, but we often donate the space. So that is on October 25th, and it's a local Go conference. I encourage everybody to submit to speak there and to buy their tickets because it's really important. Oh. It's this nope. So. Cool. So anyway, that's it. Go to Slack, Forge Utah, our paper call, and West is coming. So that's all my housekeeping stuff. Then I'm going to hand it off to Todd, where he's going to tell us the 3 paths. Are there only 3?
There are only 3 paths.
Okay. Well,
it's very unfortunate.
It is. Great timing.
Okay. Do the ritual of sharing. Yay. Okay, so we're doing a new thing for me today. This is about experimentation and learning. I have notes on my phone in a completely different app as opposed to using slides as notes. So we're going to see how that works. I am open to discussion. There's a slide after which is pretty open to being interrupted. So feel free to, when that slide we get to that slide, let me know if you want to like weigh in on something, ask questions, whatever else. It's going to be awesome. But this is about how to get a nerdy tech job, as opposed to like a marketing and tech job or something. The jobs that us nerds go after, or are adjacent to us nerds, etc., work with us nerds. They're the creme de la creme. They are a little different animal than a lot of other jobs, but I'm about to discuss how they are not very different and that these life skills apply to anything. But we'll talk about that in a minute. This is not paths to how to ace an interview, because once you've gotten an interview, you're kind of in a good spot. Like, this is about how to get up to bat, not how to bat well. How to bat well will depend on a variety of factors that will apply to individuals or situations. I'm trying to give basically advice to get people there so that they can express themselves and not be filtered by the HR system. So with that, I should also note that there will be gifts, as is tradition. If you're on the streaming or YouTube Live or the recording, it probably looks terrible because Google Meet is awful at frame rates and whatever. I can't change that. The other side of this is it is June 4th, 2024. So if you were looking at this in the future, it is worth noting that the market is incredibly weird And we can talk more about that, but I will not be going into the specifics because I think this applies to pretty much all of history. There will be some historical context that I will be bringing to the table to discuss how things have kind of changed over the years, but we're going to be talking about right now and probably. So, without further ado, I don't like tooting my own horn. I'm not very good at it. I feel just pompous trying to do it, but I do need to establish some sort of credibility here. So, this slide is all about that. The big thing is I don't think I'm the bee's knees or anything. I don't think that like I am the authority on this or anything. I just have a lot of experience. I've been around the block, and the strongest credibility to this advice is it is not easy. I don't have a get rich quick scheme for you. I don't have like a do this one cool thing and you'll get there. This is nuanced and wasn't me either. Nuanced and it's expected to be something that we have to work at, have to invest in, have to learn over time, make mistakes at, etc. Oh, come on. Yes. Yes. Yay. Hopefully with the actual meeting in a different tab, this will work better. I don't know. Google Meet's weird. So anyway, there's no panacea. That's the point here. I would like you to take me seriously. I will also note that 2 weeks ago I was laid off, and so I am currently looking. So I am applying this advice yet again, as I always have, to my job search. It is nuanced and updated for the modern times because I haven't had to do a job search quite like this for over a decade, but we are here and it still is getting results. I don't have a job offer yet, so I don't really know how to weigh in on that, but I'm getting interviews. So I'm getting the at that part, you know? All right, so there are only 3 ways. There are classifications is what this really boils down to. It's not like separate paths. There's like overlap between the two. We'll get into that, but there are only 3 ways. And everything that you could possibly do to get a job is going to fall into one of these 3 categories. Without further ado, you can always ask questions. Institutional education. This is not just college. This includes boot camps. It includes anything like technical schools or apprenticeships, things like that, where there is a formal path that is structured with an input and an output. The big kicker here is that whatever it is, for the purposes of our discussion, is not about what you learn. It is about how you get the job after you have learned what you learn. What you learn is any debated topic, and we will get into some of that, but only in the context of you need a job. If you are at a college that has no job placement program, has no relationship with any other tech companies or anything like that, for, hey, we have these graduates, they need jobs, we would like them to be successful. Also, we're good at educating them, so you can take us seriously. That's not going to get you a job. That's not really a path. Like, you might as well like read a book and then wonder why you don't get a job, right? So institutional education can be a path to getting that first job. It is not always going to be unless it has a way, it has a bridge between the learning and the job. There is a company, schoolish thing that was once called Lambda School. Now it's called Bloom Tech, I think. Can't remember. Yeah. They're a boot camp, but they have a business model where they are only going to get paid if you get a job. And there's controversy around it, and I don't want to get into that. whether you like it or not, the point is like they are incentivized to help you get a job. And if that is the case, that is a path to getting that job. How they do that is usually working with, other institutions, big companies or recruiting firms or whatnot, and they work with their candidates to say, like, you need these skills, you need to be able to demonstrate these skills, otherwise we're not going to vouch for you, that sort of thing. So as long as you pass the program, you meet the requirements, people will talk to you. An excellent setup. There's other incentive problems. Our own local in the Utah community, Lane Wagner, he runs boot.dev. Several years ago, he wrote a big blog post about the incentive misalignment that he saw in some of these programs, including Lambda. I'm like, I really liked his take, but it's a really good exploration if you want some homework to go and explore this path more about like why that may or may not get you a job. Yay. Adjacent jobs. This is a time-honored tradition. I don't recommend it. It's very easy to understand. If you work in QA, if you work in tech support or customer service, if you work in the mailroom, if you work in the janitor department, janitorial cleaning services department, whatever it is, and there are dev jobs there that you are actually going for, it's a way in the door to the company, and then you have kind of an in to being interviewed for those jobs. That's perfectly reasonable. We used to do that at Workfront all the time. A lot of QA people weren't really like coders when they started that job, and then they would learn how to do the coding and then like interview for the job. It's not a very good path. And the reason why is a thing that we're going to revisit over and over and over again in this talk is consider the hiring manager. If you are the hiring manager, you have someone from the mailroom or whatever that wants to interview for a dev job. They're brand new, they have a portfolio or whatever. That will get you to the point of the manager will probably look at your portfolio, unless he already has somebody in mind. But you're still in competition with everybody else in that pool. And if you don't have the qualifications that they're looking for, that's still a rough gig, especially if you're trying to like get in and you are also against other referrals. That's going to make you like bottom rung as far as like experience level and whatnot goes, unless you've already done the rapport building and whatnot. Again, the GIF on this is a clip from The Secret of My Success, which is a hilarious show, probably hasn't stood the test of time. I haven't seen it for 15, 20 years. But Michael J. Fox, he starts in the mailroom, becomes an executive later, through hilarious things. That is a path. That has been a path. It's still a valid path. It's just not the one I would put all of my eggs in. So the other trade-off, what else did I want to cover in that one? Oh, yeah. So I want to tell a story about the first corporate job that I had was in 2000. It was at a company called Trend Microsystems. They do antivirus software. They were super big in EMEA, and they had a bit more of a US showing at the time. Then they were trying to build more and more and more as they go. Anyway, I worked there, and I knew a sales engineer that had become a dev. And a sales engineer to dev is not like that big of a leap. But at the time, in 2000, it was not like as technical a position as much as like, it was more like IT with sales, like a salesperson that could set up an environment to demo. Remember, this is like early internet days. There definitely wasn't like a whole lot going on in like streaming or anything like that. So we're talking somebody that can set it up on a laptop that probably weighs more than my entire backpack and can display that in an environment that is completely hostile to anything. Like it has no network, it has no anything. He got tired of that. And so he took a screenshot, every screen in the app that he needed to demo. And he turned that into a web page that he could do map, like if you've ever done a big image, you just do map areas of like, if you click in this square or this triangle or whatever, it goes to a different page. You can set up those links. And so he just created an entire demo based off of screenshots that you could click on as if it was a real app, and it looked a lot like a real app, and it was all running local. This was before browser security was even a thought in anybody's head, and it worked fantastic. And basically, it was so good, it was so effective, he could build up so many demos so fast and got other people building those demos. They made him an engineer and gave him other resources, other people, other systems to start building onto that. So you could do things like enter something into a field and have that appear on other screens, that sort of thing. So that entire demo was a path to engineering. Those things still exist. Those things are still around. I don't, again, recommend it, but if you have the opportunity, you can seize it. It is a very valid path in those cases. So, the rest of this talk will focus on networking, because this is not the straightforward path, but it is the most effective path. It is not the easiest path, but it is the most effective path. It is still hell to go through, but it is an effective path. It's not necessarily like, oh, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. That's wrong, because you still need to know things, because especially in the tech world, you need to be able to do things. If you cannot provide value, I don't care whose cousin you are and how much I like them, you're just not going to be able to fulfill the role. So knowing things is important, but who you know will open up the more direct path to being at that. It will get you into the door of interviews if they are available. So again, we're going to talk more and more and more about this. Does anybody have questions so far? Good. I don't want to just steamroll anyone. But selling your value is the goal here. And we'll see a lot of different paths of how to invest in that and whatnot. The key I really want you to dig into is that you are a salesperson, whether you like it or not. And it doesn't matter whether you're going for a tech job or any other job. It doesn't matter whether you're dating or not. You are selling yourself in all cases to all other people at all times in all interactions. And you must be a good salesman of your product. That might not be I'd really like to mow your lawn. I can mow your lawn, but I don't want to sell that to you, But what you do have to offer matters to the audience. You Incorporated is the company that we are all selling from. And what services you offer is irrelevant. If you have something to offer, someone else is required to turn that into value. And so we're going to be talking about how to sell yourself as somebody who is fairly antisocial myself. Well, not antisocial, but we'll get to that. I'm not a social butterfly. I don't like socializing. But I learned this skill because it's kind of important to feed my family. And it is more effective to build a group and a team and work with others because we live in a society. Any other things I wanted to make sure oh yeah. I really want to drive the point home. This is the most important skill of your life, regardless of whether you want a tech job or not. This is the most important skill of your life. Your life will be meaningless if you know nobody. You might as well live on a deserted island. If you figure out the cure to cancer and you know nobody, it dies with you. There is no value to your life if you do not know other people and can give that value out. Now you might get a good exchange on that. Economics is not the point of this talk. The point is you can't find meaning on your own. Networking is basically just socializing. And so it becomes the only skill to matter. Give tax. Okay, so I want to address some of the resistance that I myself have had in the past about networking in general as a concept. We use the term networking, but it's really just socializing. And it seems subjective. It seems like it's just prone to bias, and people are mean. I'm mean. That's the thing. I acknowledge that, but it doesn't matter because nobody knows that you can code and you can't prove it. And every hiring manager thinks they're being objective. Every company thinks that they've reduced bias. And that's adorable. I think it's awesome. But as good as those efforts are, they're not eliminated, and you cannot prove that you can bring the value because we don't know what engineering means. We don't know what software development means. We don't know what productivity means. We have guesses, we have clues, we have kind of vague notions, but it is still a subjective art today. And until that changes, we need to play the game that is, not the game we want. So think about it from a hiring perspective. You're a hiring manager, and I've been here recently, in fact, in February. You have 1,000 resumes. Who do you interview? Do you interview all 1,000? Do you do a phone screen on 1,000 resumes? Or do you read every single one? No, of course not. Nobody in their right mind does, because I didn't hire you to read resumes. I hired you to manage a team that provides value. You do not have time, nobody does, to read 1,000 resumes. If you own the company and you're hiring your first employee, you still don't have time because the company must still be run. You still have taxes to pay, etc. It takes a long time to read resumes. So you're going to find some pretty interesting heuristics. I'll tell you what I did in February. If anybody did not have a profile picture, a name, and or a location in the hybrid environment that it was Phoenix, Arizona, I just tossed it in the bin because it was completely useless to me. If I couldn't tell anything about them from a glance, that was an easy sticking point. You can't do the basics of setting up your LinkedIn profile or your resume or whatever. Great. What do I even call you on the phone? Hey, P something. Do you want a job? Like that's not a conversation anybody's going to have. Yes.
Your profile picture. You mean specifically if they're hitting you up on LinkedIn? You're not expecting profile pictures on resumes.
Yeah. So it was all LinkedIn in that case, and so that's why I'm using it as an example. But like even like before LinkedIn, like the resumes would come in, and like if it didn't have a name and contact information, it was really easy to be like, I don't care about the rest of this page. I can't email or call you, so this is a pointless exercise. Yes.
So in that situation, you're looking at LinkedIn. Are you also looking at like GitHub, Bitbucket, like other sites? Like, is LinkedIn kind of the main one, or?
Yes. So again, think about it from the hiring perspective. If I'm the hiring manager, there's a funnel. There's like a set of weeding things. And everybody's been through this. If they've ever gotten an interview anywhere, there's always like that first initial screen of like, are you a real person and can you speak English or whatever else is the requirement? And do you smell or whatever? You know, like there's different like stages of getting the job. And the resume is one of those. And there's several layers of that as well. If you're in an HR system, I wouldn't even see the resumes because HR is doing that filtering for me, right? Like, or the system is doing that filtering based off of keywords or whatever. The game is played different everywhere. The point is, if you're a hiring manager, it doesn't matter what you think a hiring manager should do. You will behave just like other hiring managers because we all do. Otherwise, we would all go to the one guy who's reading all of our resumes, and then he would regret his decisions. So again, think from the hiring perspective. This is an important part of building that trust and getting through that process. If you can do the resume game, that's fine, but that is not going to be as effective as just skipping it entirely. Hence networking. University. Let's talk about university a little bit. I do not have a college education. I started programming when I was 9. When I got to college, I took a few classes. It was incredibly slow for my experience level. That's not everybody's experience. I don't think it's bad to get a university education. I have had a lot of gaps in my understanding of the basic theory of computer science. I've had to build on that. I admit that fully. I don't think that there's a bad thing about university education. But university is not as trusted as it once was, mostly because it can't keep up with demand. Mostly because, historically speaking, in the 60s and 70s, computer science wasn't a thing. It was just becoming a thing. And so you would basically be hiring math people or electrical engineers or whatever the case may be. And they were only at like big corporations like IBM, you know? It's not like they came out and did a whole lot of things like software is eating the world. There were no startups doing software in the 60s. There were startups doing Atari, which is mostly hardware, till late 70s. There is startups doing like a mix of hardware and some code on like a chip or two. But remember, the Apple IIe wasn't even until like 84, I think. Can't remember. But the scene was good, but it was hobbyist at best. And all of those people had an incredibly heavy math or computer electrical engineering background. In that kind of environment, and you're IBM, you are farming from some of the top schools in the world, right? That's a good pipeline for you. Today, that is not a good pipeline. That is a terrible pipeline. You need people that can move much faster. You need more of them than any universities can produce. We're still, I think, 4 million dev jobs behind in the US alone. And, you know, we're not filling them very fast because we're picky as all get, but that's a lot. We don't have that many college students, period. So it's not getting fulfilled anytime soon by university. The role has changed. We need better ways to get people. We don't have any institutions filling that gap. I mean, we have boot camps and whatnot, but it's small potatoes as if you look at the numbers of targets and whatnot. Let's talk about
Back in the Google Meet.
So while you're doing that, it seems like larger institutions are more susceptible to requiring a bachelor's, master's, or PhD
Absolutely.
level, right?
government is still an absolute requirement. We will get to moment. How is it not there? I don't understand. Can't do the click on another window. Weird. Anyway, share again. So, yep. Allow. Okay, where are we? So yeah, role of university has dramatically changed in the last 50 years, especially in the last like 10, 15. It makes networking more important, even if you're at college with a job placement program. You graduate from MIT, you will get a lot of interviews, but you will still be competing with every other MIT graduate unless you go down the chain to like not work at like the Big Fangs or something, you know? Like competition still exists at every level. So the game still needs to be played. Humans are social animals. I know that I don't like socializing. I really don't. I'm a homebody. I don't like big crowds. I'm not antisocial. That's a different psychosis. It's a lot more serious. I don't want to use the word lightly, especially in a talk that's being broadcast online and hopefully recorded for posterity. But people are not very social, right? I'm not very social. Our industry tends to gravitate more or get more people that gravitate towards not being social. Now that has changed a lot in the last 20 years, and I admit that, but you're still social. You still want things from other human beings, and other things or other human beings want things from you. That is a social dynamic. We have different models, but we are still social. So if you don't like that we're social, tough. Reality does not care. We must play the game. And last but not least, is perfectly normal. It's perfectly normal. People build trust based on people who are around them and how they work together, and how they like each other, and their shared interests. A whole bunch of dynamics there that we won't get into, but we will embrace that as a fact because sometimes it be that way.
No, that's where you came from. Sorry, I use that quote all the time. In the context.
There was I can't remember his name, baseball player or something. People don't think it'd be like it is, but it do.
Like that sometimes.
Yeah, no, it'd be like that. So, let's talk about ways to socialize and network and all that thing. First, meetups like this, events, one-off events, they're very different, but they're still, again, you're just going somewhere or attending something online or whatever. It's great. It's perfect. The difference is you're either going to meet new people, like in an event, that's the only reason you should be going. If you are looking for knowledge at an event and you're paying $300 for an event, I don't know how to help you. Google it, read something. Like it's not, that's so expensive. Maybe you need the structure, I won't judge. But if you're going to an event for networking, you should be going to meet new people. If you're going to a meetup, you are going for a community. That is different. They are often the same when you start, but you have to know your goals going in where you can get results coming out. I'm going to wiggle. Hopefully, it's not going to save it. It's not going to save it. We know it's not going to save it. It's fine.
Let's reconnect, have a little grace.
Yeah, little digestion moments, you know? The biggest thing I want to talk about here is that when you go to a meetup, you're joining a community, and that means that there are going to be cliques. We do that here. We do that at every meetup. There are people that are regulars. They trust each other. They want to hear each other's opinions on either the talk or if there's no talk, just what's happening, that sort of thing. We will do that today. After this talk, we will riff on my talk. I will riff on my talk. Save your spicy comments for after the recording. That way that we don't get demonetized by YouTube or whatever. But I'm happy to hear them. I am happy to hear spicy takes. But if you're not part of that community, there will still be cliques and you will feel excluded. Get over yourself, pull up a chair to the circle, and listen. Get into the community. You do that by first lurking and then participating when you can add value. If you can't add value for a while, that's fine. Maybe you can just ask questions. Maybe you can just be friendly or listening ear or whatever. Doesn't matter. The point is, going to a meetup and starting to build a community is networking. It's valid. It's also how we find like-minded people. You want to work in Go? Go to the Go meetup. Start working in Go with others. We'll get to that in a moment, but community member behavior is also super important. Like, a community member does not come in and be like, give me a job. Because you're a stranger. I don't know you from Adam. Why would I give you a job? Get out. Now I hate you already. You know, you have only one first impression, but if you're a community member and what would you expect a community member to behave like, that becomes a really easy question to like, what should I do? Well, be nice and participate lightly. Then add more steps. It's fine, whatever. Like, you do this online, you do this in person. Well, maybe you don't do this in person. Maybe you only do it online. Maybe you only do it in IRC. I don't know, but you can do it in presence as well for the same reasons. It's all just communities. Oh, be picky. Be picky. You do not know anybody there, so you should be identifying who is effective. I am up here speaking with authority. I sound like I'm talking about things that are important. I may present myself as if I'm a know-it-all for the sake of the speaker or whatever. You will hear me speak strong opinions loosely held in any community that I'm a part of. That is not important. That is a red flag if that's all I do, right? If you don't know that my opinions are based off of experience, my opinions are useless. If you don't know that I am effective at doing things, then what are my words? So watch for red flags that you would have in any sort of social situation. The people that are popular, the people that are type A personalities, want all the attention. Those can be fine, but you need to validate that. Otherwise, that's a red flag. The only thing that matters in this industry is results. The only thing that matters is results. If those results are costly, those aren't results. So there's always trade-offs. But if you can't do the job, we don't want you. If you can do the job, I will take your weird haircut, you know? So, same thing applies at meetups. And then, if you're going to a meetup like Go, I don't know, and you don't do any Go, that will limit your community membership, right? I attend the Rust meetup, and blasphemy, I know, but I don't attend the Rust meetup because I want to be part of that community. I don't hate that community. I have nothing against that. I have nothing but love for that community. But I don't have a use case for Rust. I am just interested in it. So I go for the talks. I go for the chatter about Rust. So I'm learning things. I'm purely consumer audience at that meetup. I still build rapport and whatnot, but I'm definitely not trying to extract anything from that or be a participant, because I can't. Like if I was like, yeah, I'll totally help you on that library, I wouldn't, because I wouldn't even know where to start. I mean, I would. I'd be able to figure it out. But for the vast majority of things that are so new to you, you can't just go and join and like just jump in. You have to figure out how to add to the community and do stuff. If you're not doing stuff with the tech that you're attending the meetup for, you're kind of limited. So try to participate in the tech stack, you know? Give tags. Prepare. Oh man. Okay. So let's get one thing out of the way. Every online community is toxic. I don't care what your definition of toxic is. It's a meaningless word, but every online community is that way. We've been doing the internet thing for a long, long time. We used to have a saying back in the 90s, is when I first heard it after like BBSs and stuff like that, where you actually dialed into the forum. We had a phrase called "don't feed the trolls." You cannot assume that somebody else is doing something negative and you need to care. You need to have strong filters. The bigger the community, the more you need to filter. It is 100% on you. It is not on whoever you want to blame for it. It isn't on like the trust and safety committee. They're bad at their jobs, especially when you're trying to filter out not whatever you want to deem as undesirable, but like bad opinions on Go. They're not going to protect you from bad opinions on Go. They're not going to protect you from Vim versus Emacs. They're not going to protect you from making fun of your favorite library. It doesn't matter. You filter that out yourself. Learn it, love it, don't feed the trolls. I cannot stress that enough. It will make your life better. It will make your community better. It will make your family better. It will make everything in your world better if you learn to filter yourself. And that means you can use the tools, like you can block people. I'm not saying like, you know, ignore ads like without an ad blocker. Use the ad blocker. Use the people blocker. But you're not escaping this by choosing a different social app, whether it's a big one or a small one or anything. There are people, we are all jerks sometimes. You just gotta learn. So online communities are that. That's the first rule of online communities. The other side is all growth comes from conflict. Not all conflict leads to growth. You should not be afraid of diving into a debate as long as it is healthy. You should not be afraid of that discussion where your views are going to be challenged on whether or not you should use an empty interface. Have your views challenged. Go in, hold both ideas in your mind, learn other perspectives. It will make you a better engineer. It will make you a better community member. You'll be able to talk about the trade-offs. You'll be able to talk about like, well, you can do that, but then you run into this issue, or whatever the case may be. Don't shy away from things that are uncomfortable just because they're uncomfortable. Shy away from them because they're unhealthy. And what that means to you is going to be different to you. I'm not trying to give you like advice about like what you should be. I'm trying to say like how to live online. And that's important. There's Slacks, Discords for different communities. There's forums. There's all the social medias. Pick one, pick all of them, whatever you got to do, wherever you can find your people. And I'll tell you a little bit about a guy named John. He goes by Roger the Great, or Internet Janitor online. Good friend of mine, lived in my house for several years. That's how good of a friend he is. Total nerd. Total nerd. I'll tell you, you don't understand half of it. I love this guy because he just decided one day that he wanted to get into K. Who here has heard of the programming language K without hearing from me?
But I'm your job too.
Yeah. Okay. Touche. You got me this time, Gadget. Yeah. He just decided to get into K. He thought it was great. It's an APL-like. Does anybody know what APL is? Okay. APL and K and Q and a few of the languages, they're all from the same family. They're all from the same guy. His name's Arthur Whitney. And he thought this was great. It's an array-based programming language, uses a lot of symbols. You cannot read it until you learn it. And then once you kind of learned it, you're kind of in a cult-like kind of understanding of it. It's a great language for finance, data analysis, that sort of thing. Fantastic. He joined this online community of like 27 people in the entire world who have ever used K outside of work or finance, and learned K, added some tools, got into some discussions. He was really into this whole thing. He built his own tools. He invented an online IDE and runner for K called OK. And it's fantastic. You can do like graphics in it, like spit blasting the whole thing. He's got demos. You should check it out if you're at all interested. The point I'm trying to make here is that after doing this for like a couple of years, like three people in the community worked at a company called, well, I won't tell the company name, but at a company out of New York. And they said, hey, we like what you've done and we want you to come interview at our company for this senior position over here, blah, blah, blah. Like he'd never had like a real job. And because he was in academia for a long time, he was a PhD candidate. He'd done several other like business kind of things, consulting and all that jazz, but like this was his first job. And he just got it based on the community membership that he held. Now that is an incredibly niche thing. I'm not trying to say that's what you should do. Go pick this obscure tech that nobody knows about. I'm just saying like, that's what community membership online is. And that's an extreme, right? The other extreme is sitting on your couch and wondering why nobody's giving you a job. I'm not saying you need to be at this extreme. I'm saying where you draw the line should probably be closer to that extreme than the couch. But where you draw that line is up to you and your needs and your level of tolerance. Yes.
Yeah, so this kind of seems to fall in that same category as people who talk about contributing to open source. Is that kind of the same vein?
Yes.
Being part of the community in that way?
Yes, very much. And what your contributions are matter. It's not just like contribute to open source that people will just notice you. No, you have to talk with the maintainers. You have to get some traction. You have to, again, it's the social side of that. That's what matters. And when he's talking like deep K tech, it's really easy to talk about K and not really like about like, so how's your wife? I don't even know if you have a wife. I don't even know if you're a human being. You're just like this GitHub handle, you know? On the internet, no one knows you're a dog. But yes, you can build those kinds of relationships slowly, and how you are seen matters more than your code, if that makes sense. They kind of go hand in hand. Like if you write ineffective code, people will notice. But you know, it happens. Let's see, what else? Nope, that's not what I wanted at all. Yeah. So also, again, wait. Oh yeah, I can undo. Beautiful. Again, watch for false signals, watch for people that are posturing. They happen online all the time. Don't feed the trolls. All right. This one's more important. Deep tax. This is where we might get controversy, mostly because it's Utah. This is a Utah pushback thing. Go to lunch. Go to lunch. Just go to lunch with anyone. Just do it. Just do it. I can't stress this enough. Lunch is a perfect way to build bridges with coworkers, to build team building stuff, to understand them, to build trust. Like, that's what this all boils down to. Coworkers want to trust you, and to build trust, you must spend time with them.
Oh, you get a perfect chance to talk to people while they're getting rushed with dopamine from eating
Yeah.
food. So like they're literally associating you with
Yes.
those times.
And food is a social bonding mechanism in all humans, cross-culturally, throughout history. We don't realize it because it doesn't feel like there's a mechanism that A leads to B. But who you eat with, who you cook for, who you cook with, these are bonding elements. I cannot stress this enough. You think this is expensive? You are wrong. If you spent $20 every single lunch, 5 times a week for 50 weeks a year, you will spend $5,000 a year. Get over yourself. If your budget doesn't allow for that, fix your budget. It is wrong to throw away that networking opportunity. You got a special diet? Great. I have a friend named Zach. He's a great engineer. Super not social. Super not social. He has a diet because he goes to the gym. And he's like, I would rather spend my carbs on beer instead of a sandwich. He brought grilled chicken and spinach for lunch every day. And I said, come to lunch. And he was like, no, I brought lunch. And I said, I don't care. Bring your lunch. And he brought it. And that was an eye-opening experience for him because he didn't know that that was allowed. If you get dietary restrictions, fine. Nobody cares. Like, people act like, oh, well, can't bring this into Costa Vida. It's not Costa Vida food. They don't sell coffee. I bring in my coffee all the time. And if I went to like someplace across the street because I didn't want them that day, I could still meet my friends who are patrons of Costa Vida and eat with them. And nobody bats an eye. And if anybody does, you can be like, oh, I'm sorry. And then continue on your day. Because nobody cares. They aren't paid enough to care. Like, so you're gonna get randomly hit on by like some Karen that's like, you can't eat that in here, and like, noted, and then ignore them. And don't feed the trolls. Yeah. Go to lunch. Go to lunch. Use it wisely. Do not go with the same people all the time. That's a waste. That's a waste of opportunity. You want to build like long-term rapport, but you should also be meeting new people. You should go across the aisle and talk to the salespeople or whatever. I made that political. It's political. It's fine. Go meet like legal. Go find people from different meetups and say like, hey, I met you at this meetup. Would you like to go to lunch? I don't have any agenda. I would just like to hear about what you're working on. And, you know, it'd be great. It'd be awesome. I don't want to expose my GIF. The last GIF. We gotta have something to look forward to.
Even to that point, even someone like me who's not particularly social, if I'm at like a conference, you gotta make it a point, right?
Yeah.
Like go sit at a random table full of people you don't know and talk to them.
Very.
30 minutes, right? Whatever your lunch takes. It's very low risk.
Wow. Large show. Okay. Yes, exactly that. I actually met Layden Wagner online, but then I met him in person for the first time at Go West, and we had lunch at Go West for that very reason, because I just wanted to get to know him. And I was like, hey, Layden, I've never met you in person. Let's chat. And then I just listened to what he was doing. Yes.
Another thing with this that I have learned is it's not always wise to only talk about work when you do that, right?
Yes.
Especially if you're going with the same people, talk about life, not just work.
In a GitHub community, you stay on topic. In a Slack community, you keep it in the right channel. In person, that's very different. There's no channel. Like, I would like to speak over here now. I will say, avoid the 3 classics that we don't talk about anymore, but we should more. That they are, do not talk about sex, do not talk about politics, do not talk about religion. Just don't. I don't care what rapport you think you have with this person. They are your coworker. Shut up. Avoid those 3 topics until you are deep enough friends that you would donate blood for them or something, whatever the case may be. Like that is a deep, intimate conversation and you do not want to ruin everything by bringing up your opinion. If they bring up their opinion, Grace will be like, that's nice. So about, Gorm. And, make it as awkward as you want. I don't know, whatever you got to do to avoid talking about that topic. It's a test, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, don't feed the trolls. It will make your relationship so much better at work. It will kind of help teach you how to set boundaries on the fly. It's very, very good to do that. But again, have lunch with different people. That's the whole point. What else did I want to say on that? One other thing. Oh yeah, again, be picky. You do not want to talk to deadbeats. They do not have advice that you want around in your head. You are the sum of who you spend the most time with. If you spend time with people who don't do anything, you will not do anything. It's weird. So obviously, like, I'm not telling you like ignore everyone. I'm just saying be picky and choose to invest in those kinds of relationships carefully, with good boundaries, with good expectation management. You can still be completely nice and pleasant and not have to like ingratiate yourself with anyone. That's it. Listen more. That's good. Oh yeah, okay. Again, the point is to build trust. You are not going to hire someone, or you're not going to refer someone that you do not have high confidence is going to be a good reputation spend. You're spending social capital. The same is for the reverse. If you are not good for someone else to spend their reputation capital on you, that is not a good thing. So if you're not effective as well, you need to work on that. So all I will say on that, I will also say trust is a very many discussed thing, but the only definition I think that matters as far as this topic goes is trust is not betrayal. Trust is when you do not betray the other person. Trust is when you do not abuse the other person. You do not say, hey, I had lunch with you 2 times, you owe me a job. No, now you're blacklisted in my life. Because that was ridiculous, Do not betray the trust. Give tax. I love whatever this is. I know it's from Power Rangers or something. I don't care. Like, it's just perfect. It's just perfect. Terrifying and lovely. Anyway, closing the deal. Last slide before we go to Q&A. When you actually need to lean on your network, how to do that? Because now you need a job or whatever. Or you need to find someone to fill a position. Those happen sometimes as well. When you are reaching out to someone, there are 2 rules that I use-ish. I word them very differently to myself, depending on the situation. But like, 1, if I'm about to ask someone for a favor, that's totally fine. As long as I would be valuable to that person for the same favor if they were to ask me. And that is always a very difficult thing to balance because some people I know are far more powerful in their organization than I ever will be in mine because I don't want to be the CEO. And so if I talk to other executives, they tend to have a little more sway in their orgs. And so it's really weird to be like always asking for a favor. So you want to spend those tokens very carefully. But the other side is, are you valuable enough to ask for what you're asking for? And that is a really weird thing to just know on like random people. Networking is fine, but like if you can't expect anything out of them because you can't give anything to them, then you're kind of wasting your time and you need to work on yourself more as you go. This is all long investment. I don't know if you know this, but like you can't just show up to a meetup and ask for a job. Weird. So if you're not going for like a while, like you might as well not attend meetups for networking purposes, like at all. I don't know. If you are not someone who can do the thing, And you might be early in your career. Like I have different expectations out of like junior people than like senior people, right? Like if I know someone has been doing this for 20 years and I've known them for like 8 of that, like I have different expectations for them than like the guy who I met. Yeah, I'm really getting it to go. It's my first programming language. And like, okay, cool. But the level of value versus what they're asking is also going to matter. Like if some junior says like, yeah, there's a senior position and it'd be really cool to get that big paycheck. Dude, I'm only going to say this once. This is a lesson. You cannot ask for that, or you will ruin every relationship you spend that on. And you know that's a great learning exercise. It's a conversation I've had with more than one mentee, but those are important skills, and I don't know why they're not more common. But you need to think about that. What is the relationship that I have with that person? What is the value that I offer? What is the value that I'm asking for? Is it costly? Is it expensive? And, you know, you don't go into these things expecting that, ever. Because if you do, you will fail. You have to go in earnestly. You have to go in and be like, I care about the relationship and I care about the value that we both bring to the table. I don't expect anything ever. Chances are most of the networking that you do will never pay off. Not why we do it. We do it because sometimes it might. Sometimes it might pay off in the other direction. That's how we build society. Pretty easy. It's especially important for us people that don't socialize naturally. We want to be there for each other. We want to have good boundaries. That's part of that. So when you do, another good example is like if I'm asking someone for an intro to another person that I don't know, but they do know at this other company, I can just be like, hey, would you feel comfortable introducing me to so-and-so? They work at such and such company, and I'm looking to learn more about this job at that company. And I would just love to have a warm introduction to someone in the know. It's a very low skill. You're not putting your relationship on the line of, hey, can you get me that job? What a stupid question. Nobody should be asking that. People do all the time. I can't tell you how often it happens, but we learn the hard way sometimes, I guess. So when you close the deal, always try to be polite. Always try to give people room that you don't expect a yes, because saying no is sometimes hard. If you make it easy, then they will retain the relationship without making it awkward. They'll be like, I can't. Cool. All right, I understand. And even if you don't understand, you understand. So, that said, it is time. Q&A. Any have questions, comments? Yes.
So, which of these techniques have you found maybe most effective? And I'm especially interested in what's working for you in this go around.
So once again, for posterity, it is June 4th, 2024. The market is super weird. Just super, like, there's lots of job postings. And I think that there's a lot more job applicants. And it's really, we flooded the market over the last few years. And by few years, I mean probably the last 12. And most people are unqualified for those positions. The juniors, as in any downturn, the juniors get hit hardest. Just, I feel for them. It's hard. They have a long uphill journey ahead of them. I definitely advise some of those. And it's tough. It's tough because there's not a whole lot. But even for the senior stuff, like there's plenty of it, but people are really cautious. I haven't gotten a whole lot of like turnaround or urgency from people. That sort of makes sense. I mentioned it on the first slide, but I didn't say it out loud. I started the corporate side. Like my first dev job was for a game company for a MUD in 1996. And I didn't get any, like I wasn't like paid any salary or anything. We didn't make that much as a company, but I learned a lot. And it was a real company. We had real revenue and I did real projects. My first corporate job was Trend Micro. And You may have remembered I said 2000. That was the dot-com bubble burst. And I got married in 2001 and moved with my family to Oregon, thinking I can get a job anywhere. I have skills. That was rough. That was really rough. So I've been through a couple of these downturns, and this seems pretty spot on for that, where if you can provide value, you can provide value. But you still have to find the place that needs value. And that's probably the biggest struggle. My network doesn't have a whole lot of jobs. Like Weave is not hiring. I don't know if you know this. You go to their website, they don't have a single engineering position, not one. That's fine. I don't expect all of my network to have jobs all the time. But I also made a post on LinkedIn. I got laid off on a Friday. I put it on Monday. And I know some pretty heavy hitters in the networking world. The senior VP of IT Tech Ops that I used to work for at Berkadia reposted and said, if I had a position, he would already have an offer. Todd is a force of nature. That is very comforting to me. Also not a job though. But he doesn't have a position. So the market's tight and cautious, and so it's just taking more time. I will say networking is going to be by far the easiest into anything. It always has been. I've only ever gotten one job off of a resume to a random place, and everything else has been through networking. Everything else. I don't think anybody's experience is that different, especially at the later stages. Like the university path is really good for your first job and not useful at all after that. The networking side of things is always so rooted in the path, especially at like the bigger companies. Like if you want to like talk to Google, you either go through a university or you know somebody, because they're not going to take your random resume unless it says, I graduated from MIT and just decided to not take their job placement program at all. Yeah. So, does that answer your question?
I noticed there wasn't really any discussion of like tech recruiting or like recruiter pipelines. What are your thoughts?
So again, recruiters are still going to be just a raw resume placement, and so it's just going to be like the same with extra steps. And now there's a person in the middle that you have to manage. I don't recommend recruiters. If you're a junior, they might be helpful. Again, they have never been effective for me, and they have never been effective for anybody I know. Everyone who has a story that is successful with a recruiter is always going to some junk company that they don't attend meetups. So they're just not in my social circle. I know they exist, but they just don't interact with me ever. And it's usually not anything like particularly interesting as a job. If you're going that route, that's totally fine, but you're also not listening to this talk.
Cool, thanks.
Recruiters are awful. There's some good ones. We have one in the Forge Slack.
A couple in Forge Slack, but
Oh, yeah.
they do a good job of sticking to the jobs channel.
Yeah.
There are respectful recruiters that do a good job
Yeah.
and can help you get in the door, right? Like if your goal is to get in the door, I would say choose your recruiters like you would choose your friends. Be very picky.
They're quick networking in some cases, but you have to find a good one. I know Michael Wentz is in there. I've worked with him a couple times, not for myself, but like in other positions at other meetups and whatnot. He's good. The two other recruiters, I hired an in-house recruiter once, and she was amazing. And I worked with a recruiter at Tech Systems once. She was also amazing. She left recruiting 6 months later because it is a grueling job and want to. So your mileage may vary.
I was gonna say a lot of recruiters are out of a job right now.
Yes.
For sure.
The other thing to consider is if there's a company or a division in a company you want to work at, it's not a bad idea to develop a relationship. Not like, hey, I'm going to, take 30 minutes of your time every week. But if you know someone in the industry at a company, it's okay to like ping them and say, I'm interested in any opportunity. And then whatever discussion happens and follow up, a couple weeks later or whatever, how are things going? Is anything different? And that could be a lot more effective than just trying to send in your resume where it gets stacked up with 1,000 people. Because they just might say, oh, come to think of it, we do have a position. So if you time that interval in a way where it's not bothersome, but like enough stuff can develop, I think that's reasonable.
I agree. I will also kind of stress, just because we're talking about techies, we tend to want efficiency, and that is the opposite of what you want in these social bridges that you're trying to build. You want more personalization. That said, like when you're actually like reaching out to someone, don't waste their time. Like 20 minutes of pleasantries to just get your question is a waste of time. Package it nicely, but get your point out in the first message. The moment you open up that DM window, you should know like, hey, it's been a bit. I've been thinking about blah, blah, blah. Would you be interested? Or it's been a while, but I saw that you know blah, blah, blah. And I'd love to get a warm intro for blah, 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 blah. Straight to the point. It doesn't feel like you're wasting anybody's time, and it doesn't feel like you're using them. Now, if you go in and be like, hey, I need an intro to blah. Very efficient as far as text goes. That's not how people work. And this isn't IRC. So don't do that.
So I'd also like to get your opinion on, there's a lot of diversity as far as like what company, what industry do you want to work at, what type of languages? How should you decide all that stuff?
That's an entire other presentation. We're at the Go meetup. So if you're into Go, like there's not as many places hiring as say Java. And it really just depends on your goals. Like if you want to work at a specific company, look at their tech stack and what the projects they're working on. If they're IBM, you don't want to work at IBM. You want to work at a specific subset of IBM. You need to define that. Decide something that meets your financial goals, first of all. And it might not meet it today, obviously. You and I both know that. But like, if you're going for like, yeah, I would really like to make 120K a year. I've never programmed in my life before. All right, that might be a 5-year plan, So it just depends on like what your financial goals are, what your lifestyle goals are. I know the hybrid remote in-office conundrum is a new aspect of that. For instance, I don't like going into the office, and my last company, we hired people that are hybrid, and we forced them into the office 5 days a week for the first 2 months. And even now actually, it's business casual. Like they were instructed in their onboarding email to show up in a tie and jacket as devs. And that was, again, it's 2024. I don't know. It's a sales org. I understand what happened, but it's still just asinine to the extreme. But there are still places like that. So you need to kind of identify like, okay, is this some place where I'm going to get like lit for wearing shorts? I mean, I have earrings right now, and in Utah, there are places that will look at me weird. That's fine. I'm weeding out potential employers with that. People that care about that are not exactly who I want to work for, because I want to care about code. Your mileage may vary, and I don't care. Like if you don't want to work with me, that's totally fine. But you need to identify what kind of environment you want, what kind of problems you want to solve, what kind of financial incentives you need, all of that. And then you got to build a plan.
Well, I think it helps if you have a passion for something in particular you can get.
Yeah.
Like, that's the dream, and I can all do that, but I feel like if you can get the basics down, right? Yeah. I swear I muted that when we started last time. All right. You get the basics down. You get
Yeah.
financial cover your bases. You can find something you're passionate about. Like maybe I'm not making as much money as I want, or maybe that position, or even the company, but like, here's the thing that I actually care a lot about. Even if it's not the big money making thing, even if
Yeah.
you're not really into AI or whatever, that's the hot thing, like that, I don't know, I think that just is a force multiplier for getting you where you want to be.
Yeah. If you just want a job, the popular options are just go to the Tiobe Index and look at the top 5 and pick something to start with. If your passion involves tech, I don't think you need advice. So I was very careful in this talk to not talk about like what I consider a good developer or what I consider a proper job for an engineer, that sort of thing, because a lot of people just want a job, and that's fine. And I advise those people, show up to some meetups anyway, because networking is important. I was talking with Lane Wagner about this a couple weeks ago at lunch, and the day I got laid off, actually, it was a fun story. Come home from that lunch and get laid off. But I was talking to him about like, I know so many people, especially in Utah, because we're so family oriented. That's not bad. I have a family that are back there right now. But especially in Utah, there's this aversion to going to events. Well, I don't want to, my family won't support that. Like, well, then your family doesn't like your career. And I can't help you if 2 nights a week or 2 nights a month is too much for your career. Like, it feeds them. They should probably support that once in a while. I'm not saying that you need to go to meetups and spend 24/7 on programming. If you are just using dev as a job, it's totally fine. And this is mostly for posterity. I think most of this room is passionate and doesn't need this advice at all. But like, especially in meetups, lots of people do not get that having a job is perfectly fine, but you still need to network. You still need to like do all the things. If you're passionate, the networking will come because you'll find other people that are passionate about Go or AI or whatever else. And hopefully they'll be useful and doing good things. You'll all help each other. But again, the effective people will clump together and you'll be able to identify them and kind of join them. But yeah, to that end, if you're just getting a job, that's fine. I respect that. You still need to do the work. You still need to be effective at your job. AJ?
I disagree. I know a lot of people who are very ineffective at their job and make more money than I do.
I know, and we're all competing with them on the job market now.
And there's not enough people who are effective to help distinguish between who's effective and ineffective, so.
Yeah.
That's back.
Sorry to destroy your presentation at the last.
No, it's fine, it's fine. At the end of the day, like, getting into the interview is one thing, but I have spoken at multiple conferences and meetups about how terrible tech interviews are and how to fix them and how easy that is. And for some reason, the industry doesn't want to listen because it seems biased, and it's like, well, you're not reducing bias, you're just making it
Because you're wearing earrings, Todd, that's why.
It's true. Honestly, yes, it can be. Yes.
So, okay, I have one more question that maybe this is gonna bleed into the after talk, but I'm curious to see how you see AI changing things currently and how it will change things around this, or if it will matter at all. Like, is it just not that big of a?
I have opinions.
I'm sure you do. That's why I asked.
So, which aspect of the industry and AI would you like to talk about most?
So the thing that I've seen get popped up a lot is there's AI generated resume application stuff,
Huh?
and there's AI generated resume reviewing stuff. And so AIs are just eating each other alive
Huh?
during compute, and nobody can get in through like the old school.
It's absolutely happening. I have seen it firsthand in this year. Yes.
So and does that just get worse? Do we ever fix that, or is it like make it that much more important to go to meetups and stuff? Yeah.
Get around it.
Yeah. Again, the HR systems are always going to be crap, and they will not stop. So circumvent them by networking.
Like, just to give a story. Like, I used to talk about this stuff all the time too, so it's just I went to, I go to I go to too many meetups. I was at a meetup last month. At this meetup, we have a tradition of just announcing jobs. It's a way to kill time while people trip. It takes 10 minutes for people to show up. So during the announcements, we announce jobs, right? So I announced that, the place where I'm currently working is hiring. Somebody came up, said they were interested. Then they connected with me on LinkedIn, looked over their resume, and I made them apply through the portal, and they probably would not have gotten an interview at all if we just left them in the portal, because life, right? You know, to be fair, their resume was right for what we need, but wrong for what the recruiters are looking for. Right? So that's not going to hit any of your AI candidates. It's not going to. So I just direct messaged my director and I said, hey, this guy applied. Honestly, I think his skill set is beneficial, even if it's not what you're looking for specifically. I think we need to give him an interview. Now, I wouldn't be on that interview panel, you know, this, that, and the other, but guess what? He got a call from a recruiter the next week from our company. So meetups, knowing somebody gets you to cut the line. Now, to be fair, internal politics will always matter. My director of engineering could have said, no, we only go through recruiting, and that's an internal politics thing. But that's not the point. The point is because that person reached out to me and talked to me, and we met at a meetup, and we continued that conversation and developed the rapport where I said, oh, this actually looks like you could be beneficial, right? Like your skills match up with what I think the company needs. That's the kind of networking. And something that if we hadn't met at the meetup, I wouldn't have been so kind if he had just messaged me on LinkedIn and said, hey, I'm interested in the job. People message me like that all the time. Hey, I see you're hiring for a data engineer. And I'm like, I'm down. Like, but you know, so that's my example. I think AI bots, parsers, I mean, we've been using resume parsers for years. And they just like keywords. Tell me how an AI bot's not going to just continue doing the same thing, right? They train based off of behavior, and the behavior is keywords. So the way to go around it and talk to people. That's my suggestion. And
The problem is that these are being hyped right now as the bee's knees. Finally, the solution to HR filtering. They have the same problem with less predictability. So it will be that way for a while. I think, especially with HR, I don't mean to demean HR in general, but like, it's not exactly an exact science. I started an HR department at a call center back in the day, and I learned a lot about the state of the art. Almost went and got my PHR and all the things, and that industry is in a very strange middleman hard place, but it also doesn't know how to manage an engineering job flow or anything like that without engineers involved. And AI is not making that different.
So my neighbor is in the job hunt right now too, and I've talked to him a little bit about this specific issue. One of the challenges that's happened is because there's all of these sites that will essentially automatically apply for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's so overwhelmed the ATS systems.
Yeah.
That he finds it pretty much impossible to get through to a human. And I mean, he's using his network and he goes to meetups, but that only gets you so far.
Yep.
So he said that, fortunately, there are a bunch of videos on YouTube that teach you how to use AI to fine tune so that you can get past those systems. So he's used prompts like, we're an applicant for a job at such and such company for this, and apparently it can figure out what is the most likely filters that they might use there. And the feedback, he said, is pretty interesting because the ATS system tends to respond in a very particular way. It's like very generic response, and it's usually 24/7. If he doesn't get that, then he knows he's made it past that first filter to the place where it'll say a human will now review this. So he said that using AI actually was somewhat successful in getting past the filter.
Especially in just like the raw resume throwing side. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it just emphasizes how important those other avenues are.
Yeah.
If you can get somebody to refer you at a company, that increases your odds by a lot.
Yes. And I will say that the AI systems, they change on a dime. So the whatever advice we could give today, tomorrow, nobody knows whether it will work or not. So it's again, the market is weird.
Hopefully bribing.
You define bribing because some people will draw the line differently.
Well, you know, if you, maybe you'd be more interested in giving me that job today.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
But if it's like hey, you want to go to lunch and talk? you know,
So, okay, free, maybe buying beers or apple ciders.
There's an interesting line where you have to draw like, is this socializing or is this bribery? And that line is drawn differently for different people in different contexts. Sometimes legally, sometimes just morally or whatever your position is, but I'm not telling you to live your life, but don't do anything illegal and try to keep it on the up and up. You wanna live transparently and honestly. That's my policy. So I would see no problem like having a barbecue with hiring managers or something. It'd be weird to get them there. Didn't already know them.
Sorry, go ahead, AJ.
Buying drinks is a time-honored tradition for a reason. Joke, but there is some serious bits in this discussion.
Well, I would think bribes are typically most effective with people who are underpaid for what they perceive that they do, and you can bring significant value to their table by sidestepping the process, right? So with headhunters, you're not going to bribe them because they're going to make more money out of a candidate that gets hired for more money because they're taking either a cut of their first couple of.
Bribe them by being effective. You bribe them by being effective.
Yeah, so like a monetary bribe or something wouldn't really work. I mean, and then there's like playing golf or whatever. It's just, you know, that's just normal social, that's just networking. So I don't know what, like how a bribe would work in our industry because the amount of money, it's not like a cop where they're getting way underpaid for being nearly, you know, killed. And like they could take their wife out to a nice dinner that they wouldn't be able to necessarily with their living wages.
I
There's a way you could bribe that you could probably get away with.
I'm glad we- glad we-
No, it would be corny, but it would be memorable. Yeah, here's my resume. Just FYI, whatever your bonus was last year, if you hire me, it'll be more next year.
You had a comment, yeah?
Curious if anybody's had success with, so I think Ryan's point was really good, right? It's, you can always, best way to skip that line is to have somebody who can help you do that. I'm wondering if anybody's had any success with reaching out to people directly. So I work at NAV currently. We have a recruiter. If you go LinkedIn, you can find my recruiter's name pretty easily. You're submitting a resume. You don't know anybody at NAV, but you know, you're submitting a resume. Have you had any luck in reaching out, seeing who that recruiter is, and maybe hitting them up on LinkedIn and saying, hey, just so you know, I've submitted my application. I'm really excited about a lot of the things I've read on your website. You know, I think NAV looks like a fantastic company. Wanted to introduce I don't know, something along those lines. Is that a recommendation to?
If you have the ability to have a social interaction with the recruiter, it's appropriate. Great. It's totally fine. If it's easy for you, it will be easy for everyone else. If it takes a little bit of legwork, that can pay off. Even if just a little bit. Like the bear is very, like, I'll give you an example. I've been applying to places on LinkedIn because I think that's a requirement. I'm out of a job, so my job is finding a job. My goal is at least 5 applications a day. And so I'm applying on LinkedIn, and sometimes they'll say, meet the hiring team. It's usually a recruiter. not usually a direct manager. I could message them directly, like right then and there. I don't, but I could. I have thought about trying to get an introduction to the hiring manager through some other channels that I have on some of those jobs, but never the recruiter itself. I don't know if that would work or not, but it can. Obviously, any social interaction can.
We're talking about ways to circumvent these sites that submit things for you, right? And those sites are not going to do that. So yeah, you're right. Anybody else who has that idea is going to do that. But maybe these other utilities that are spamming
Yeah.
resumes, they're not going to.
It's a much smaller competition pool. So yeah, that's a fine point.
So it seems like it's almost more beneficial to know an engineer or someone who can vent your skills instead of the actual hiring manager, right?
Yeah.
Like in both small and large companies that I've worked at, when HR brings me a stack of resumes, there's so much difference in between who I think is good and the range of stuff that they're giving me. And I realize they have no clue about the skills that we're actually looking for and how to find them in a resume. But you get one person who says, hey, look at this guy, I've worked with him before, or I know him from somewhere, and bam, that gives you more of a shot through an HR person than knowing the HR person. Because then the HR person is like pawning this stuff onto someone who they usually have a decent idea, but they're trying to sell you instead of like what, you know.
Very much so. Very much so.
So I have a question, maybe, but I actually don't know what it is. It's a statement that might be a question.
We'll see where it goes.
So when I think of search right now, it seems like the cat and mouse game has reached an end. Like search is dead. Because there is no metric that the AI of search can filter something that the AI of generative text cannot, like, the ability to filter is not superior to the ability to generate. So now we've reached the stalemate where search is broken and there is no way to fix it, or at least no automated way to fix it. And it sounds like that's what we're saying with the ATS. It's like the cat and mouse game has reached its peak where the ATS can no longer be effective because the systems that are geared towards the generative systems can max out the filtering system. Is that?
So I call the job hunt a game in this talk several times. Play the game as it is, not the game that we want it to be. And I compared to some sports analogies, which are great for tech talks always.
Yes, I appreciate them.
I figured everybody knows what at bat means, but I think that if you're in the minutia of like the ETS systems and trying to game that system, that is an avenue that you could play, but it's like, why do we get email spam? Because it works, but it doesn't work on anyone here, hopefully. But the winning of that game, of that minutia, is not something I would want to play. So if somebody does, I think they can think about those lines, but like, at least in this mode, I guess we don't need slides anymore. At least in this mode of being, trying to be more effective than those systems can possibly be is probably lower hanging fruit for bigger bang for your buck. So that's my takeaway as far as this goes. Search itself, different conversation. We could probably do that after, but for the AI systems that we're trying to play against, like, I think the only winning move is not to play. And
It just seems like with so many companies, I mean, you mentioned the strategy. Obviously, if you know someone that you're in,
yeah,
if you're making, your goal is 5 applications a day, you won't have that.
no, and given the market that so I network. I don't know if you noticed, but I've been doing the networking thing for at least 20 years now, and no, it's very much a fairly dry pool.
It's also, it's as much a stats game though as it is a networking game, right? Like, so we talk about going to meetups and it's like, great, well, how many people can you meet to find that small percentage that's beneficial? Applying to jobs is the same thing, right? The statistics that you know somebody that can get you in the door probably play out to be this. I mean, it's going to be a different differential, right? You're probably going to get 1 in 100 people you meet that can actually help you find a job, as opposed to like 1 in 500 or 1 in 1,000, like resumes you read. So it's a different statistics game, but it's still a statistics game. And you know, so it's just, it just takes a longer time to build up that network. And it like, but if you go 1 to 100, it's way more successful than 1 to 1,000. So obviously the payoff's a higher chance of being successful, but it's still a statistical probability situation, no matter where you end up when it comes to finding a job.
Also akin to sales, like I keep saying, you Incorporated is the only thing that really matters here. We're all salespeople. I just came from Matthews, and their philosophy of sales is pretty common in the commercial real estate industry. It is pick up the phone and bother people. 100 a day. 100 phone calls a day. That's a lot of phone calls. More phone calls you make, the more people will say yes. More money you make. There's a very direct funnel between those two. Once you've figured out an activity that gets results, the business heads lose their minds. They're like, it works. Yeah, but you're alienating like everybody who doesn't want that. Doesn't matter. We're making billions of dollars. And I think it's kind of the same in the job hunt, where it's just a different kind of sales. If you throw out your resume enough, you'll get enough hooks. Are they going to be effective hooks? No. If you want that to be an effective hook, just like sales, you need to have like a better pipeline. And that, to me, is networking over the long haul. But like where I've run short on some of my network, the other side of that is you have to advertise. You have to build like content marketing. Like if you ever read the book Traction, it talks about like different ways that you can kind of build up your startup company, as far as like marketing channels and advertising and direct sales, all the things that you can use to grow. The same thing applies. And the more effective you're at networking against that, the more it will be fruitful. But if you're out of a network, like it's your first job, you've never networked or something, now you're playing a different numbers game. It's all statistics. I don't think that the systems involved matter unless you know what they are and can play against them. But yeah, people are awful. It's also, I will say, this is not an easy industry to do this in because we have no idea what the hell we're talking about. Like, what's a good engineer? I can tell you, and I have a really good definition, but my definition is a very high bar. And my definition is not something that most engineers will meet. My definition makes people sad when I hold them to it, so I don't. I will tell you, if I had the same attitude I did 10 years prior, I would not have had a job at Workfront for very long because most of the engineers there were not very effective. I'm not saying that lightly. I'm not saying that because like, oh, I don't like them. No, when we built the team that I was on there, we had 3 devs and a QA guy that had never written a line of code. And we outperformed any 3 teams you wanted to compare any metric to. And we did that for a solid year. That's not, those are not like mean words to say. There are a boatload of reasons why that was, and it has nothing to do necessarily with the quality of engineering. So when I say good engineer, what does that mean? What are the other inputs? What's holding a good engineer back from being a good engineer if they have the potential? How would you identify that? Now take all of that and put it on a piece of paper where you're trying to sell yourself. And then hand it to somebody with no technical knowledge and say, please filter this out of the 1,000 that are in the pile. This is an awful, awful way to do it. And I wish that I could solve that. I can't yet. Kind of need to pay my mortgage first. But it's never going to change. It's always been that way. It's always going to be that way until we have predictable inputs and can train somebody to do this on a factory line. That's not happening anytime soon. I don't think it's happening in any of our lifetimes. There are aspects of it that we can, and we turn those into tools that non-programmers can use, like MS Access. That's cool. I think that's great. I think those are wonderful. I think there's value there. But that doesn't answer the question of what's a good engineer. How do you identify one on a resume? So we're playing this weird game where there's so many unknowns and there's no right way to play other than, did you get the job? And all I'm advocating for is first get the interview, then we can talk, because then it's much more situational. Then you have to know your audience because it's not a general practice.